Welcome to the Stairway to Heaven. We're coming to you on X-Zone TV and Simul TV from our broadcast studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, bringing you the latest updates on the increasing galactic frequencies and their effect on us all. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. Transforming adversity into resilience. If there's one thing we've all been subject to in the last several years, it's adversity. Observing reaction during these challenging times, there are those who focus on loss, drop into despair, and wait for the government to save them, and those who seem to make lemonade out of lemons, using hardship to transform their lives. This is nothing new. There have always been ones that roll over and whine at the first sign of adversity, and the ones that tackle every challenge with introspection and innovation. So how do we become one of those ones that thrive? First, let's look at what doesn't work. There are two polar opposite but equally ineffective ways of coping with challenges. In one extreme, there's an attitude of entitlement mixed with a large dose of victim. The world is seen as being there to serve and entertain, regardless of the cost to the planet or the people. When things don't go according to plan, it's met with weeping, wailing, and finger-pointing. God forbid one look within to see what may be causing the perceived suffering. In the other extreme are the ones appearing so selfless as to destroy themselves serving others. They tend to behave as if the world and everyone in it is doomed if they don't control the situation and save the day. While on one hand these individuals take on blame and responsibility for everything, they also take it upon themselves to fix what they judge is the problem, often to the great annoyance of others. And there you have it, the narcissist and the empath that we hear so much about. But before we point the finger and start labeling those around us, it's important to recognize most of us fall somewhere in between. We will lean one way or the other depending on circumstances and conditioning. While the narcissist can be seen as the villain and the empath as the hero, in fact, they are different sides of the same dysfunctional coin, each contributing to the problem. Both assume change and challenge are bad things, and neither has the balance to cope, much less thrive, during times of crisis. One is totally focused on what the world owes them, the other on how the world needs them. Both tend to be delusional and unable to deal with the real challenges at hand. When faced with crisis, we're all prone to one-man balance state or the other. The trick is constantly catching ourselves and course-correcting, lest we fall into the trap of powerlessness awaiting us on either side. Many of us view adversity and challenge as the enemy, yet they're an integral part of life, without which our growth and evolution would be greatly diminished. We're all genetically predisposed to a greater or lesser degree of resilience. To what extent we develop it or leave it lying dormant depends on exposure to pressures and being conscious in our responses to them. One thing that determines our response is how we interpret the situation to start out with. We've all had adverse past experiences that color our perception. It's very easy to take a benign stimulus, like a garden variety rainstorm, and interpret it according to our past experience, that of surviving a hurricane. If upon the first drop of rain, we sandbag our foundation and board up the windows, what are we going to do when something real happens? It's difficult, if not impossible, to build resilience if we're constantly triggered into fight or flight. When a triggering stimuli throws us out of the present moment and into the past trauma, we're responding from the back brain, or what some refer to as the reptilian brain, where we have very few resources. There's no logic, love, compassion, spirituality, or reason in the back brain, only avoidance or aggression. One simply can't see clearly, much less problem solve from there. When triggered into the past, we tend to fall into old ruts of behavior. We may curl up and wait to be saved, attempt to control all the wrong things, or frantically board up our windows. None of these options are productive choices leading to positive outcomes when they come from the past rather than the present. Nor is it beneficial or even safe to take a Pollyanna stance and deny what's happening. Oh, tra-la, tra-la, what's a little rain? When indeed there's a hurricane at our doorstep. The first step in building resilience is uncovering the triggers that either put us into denial or fight or flight responses. These triggers color our perceptions and make it virtually impossible to be present and logical in the face of adversity. A sure sign of being triggered is jumping to conclusions and becoming traumatized by our assumptions. Oh, I've seen this before. It never goes well. When confronted with a triggering incident, stop. Take a deep breath. The deep breath is important as it helps us avoid fight or flight. If your breathing is rapid and shallow, you're one step away from the back brain and loss of resources. Next, look at the situation again. Ask yourself, what does this remind me of? Is this exactly like my past experience, or looks as if? Even if it is the same situation, are you the same? Last time, you may have been a small, helpless child with fewer resources. How you responded then is not necessarily your best choice as an adult. As an example, you may be in the same room as a large man who's yelling. Growing up, your father may have yelled at you and blamed you for his frustrations. As a child, you were dependent upon your father for everything with no defense against him. As an adult, you can simply turn and walk away if someone's being unpleasant. Same situation, different response and outcome. Or, upon reevaluating what's going on, you may realize the large man is raising his voice in frustration that has nothing to do with you. However, if we don't take the time to breathe and reevaluate the current situation, if we allow ourselves to be triggered into the past, we may cower and whimper like a child, encouraging more of the same behavior from a bully, or demonize a man for being frustrated. Avoiding responding to triggers is not as easy as it may sound. It requires self-awareness and a good dose of courage. In the past, one may have deitized their father rather than face the fact that he was mean and verbally abusive. As a powerless child with no other options, we tend to distort facts we cannot change to make them more tolerable. If we re-examine the perception, we must face the illusion of a father who was and recognize the shortcomings of the one who is. However, if we don't revisit the perceptions and reevaluate it, as an adult, the judgment and response will remain on autopilot, raising havoc in our lives. That is one of the blessings of adversity. It grants us a chance to adjust our thinking, shift our behavior, and change outcome. However, if we're unable or unwilling to be introspective, we continue to project our past experience onto current circumstances and make a rerun out of the future. Another major benefit of unearthing and short-stopping triggers is the more we catch ourselves when triggered and make different choices, the less triggers we have. This allows us to be more present to deal with whatever we're confronted with, resulting in greater resilience. Also, standing in the way of resilience is fear of lack and what we view as paramount for survival. As mammals, we're hardwired to seek out and procure the necessities of life. That's why we've survived as a species. The cougar that does not seek game or elk that fails to find grass will not survive. In recent times, many of us have lived in relative ease and abundance, consuming resources and creating waste like there's no tomorrow. The days that the planet can or will support that approach are rapidly coming to an end. Change is upon us, and the new reality brings increasing challenges to our lifestyle and to our lives. Unfortunately, this heretofore self-absorbed approach to life has bred a weak and inflexible society that views copious luxuries as bare necessities and does not deal well with adversity or change. When the store runs out of our favorite product, it's cause for much upset and griping, as if life depends on the availability of a name brand item. If the internet goes down or cell reception fails, all productivity stops, as if it's the end of the world. What are we going to do when something real happens? Well, it's about to get real. Instead of waiting for things to return to normal, we need to recognize those days are gone and adjust quickly to the new reality, or be washed out with the tide. A good first step in that direction is to reevaluate our priorities. What do we deem as important versus what's actually important? From the time my children were very small, I used to take them backpacking every summer. We would go into the Colorado wilderness for 2 weeks with only what we could carry on our backs. Often, we would not encounter another human being during the entire time. If a tent stake broke, we'd carve a new one out of a tree branch. If a water filter jammed, we'd boil water. If we ran out of dried camp protein, we would fish. I didn't realize it at the time, but the experience created very resilient adults. They're both natural leaders and others look to in time of crisis. There isn't much that shakes either one of them. They're resourceful, finding solutions when others give up in despair. Years after they were grown and gone, I continued my annual backpacking trips alone. I found it had a way of helping me maintain perspective and ground in reality. Now, not everyone has the same love for the wilderness, but there are many other ways to find perspective. Try going on a fast. Limiting one's diet can shift perspective as to what foods are sustaining and which ones are harmful addictions that we are better doing without. Going on a retreat and leaving one's electronics behind can be very eye-opening as to what a distraction they can be in our lives. Engage in anything that will help you realize that not only can we live without many things we heretofore thought of as necessities, but life can indeed be better without them. We can also transmute our experience by uncovering and reevaluating old judgments by which we've lived our lives. Anytime we decide something is always good or always bad, we've removed 50% of our options. What if there really is no such thing as good or bad? What if it's simply a matter of appropriate in the current moment? Another pitfall is complacency. Instead of becoming complacent, hapless victims of fate when faced with adversity, we can become introspective and uncover what lies within us that's keeping us from participating fully in life with all its ups and downs. If we look at any event that we feel we did not go well, rather than blame others, examine our part in the outcome. We can adjust our approach and change the future. But the most powerful thing we can do to transmute adversity into resilience is to be grateful in all things. Instead of approaching every challenge or change with dread and a sense of loss, we can ask ourselves, how does this serve? And what's mine to do here? By being grateful for and receptive to our experiences, we can become proactive, resourceful, and transmute adversity into resilience. Thank you for joining me, Gwilda Wiyaka, on the Stairway to Heaven, where we provide updates on the energetic currents facilitating our evolution into conscious, powerful co-creators. As I'm sure you've noticed, not only do the Stairway to Heaven episodes stand alone, but they weave together to form a map to evolution and personal empowerment as we enter the new era. To revisit this or any of our past episodes, visit our archives at www.stairwaytoheavenmedia.com. If you'd like to find out more about me, my school, and the evolutionary tools we offer, visit www.findyourpathhome.com. Until next time, may you be blessed on your sacred path to wholeness. We are here. The time is now.